Hello, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen, and my guest today is someone who I actually got to meet through some other programs that we've both been a part of. And her name is Christine Mander. I hope I pronounced that right. Mander? Yeah, okay, good. Um, and Christine is an Alexander Technique teacher, and she's been doing that. I don't even have the number of years on here. It's about 4 years.
About 3 years, yeah.
3 years, 4 years. Okay.
Well, yes, I qualified about 3 years ago. So.
Okay. Okay. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the Alexander technique and whatever else comes up in the conversation, and how the technique, amongst other things, can help those of us who are, older than 50 plus or minus, large numbers or not. So, anyways, welcome, Christine. It's a pleasure to have you here on
Thank
the
you for
show with
inviting me.
me.
It's lovely.
Yeah. So, you want to tell us a little bit, kind of lay a little bit of a basis for the Alexander technique, and maybe you can tell us how you kind of got involved in that, and what you did with it during the pandemic.
Okay, okay. Well, I'd heard about the Alexander technique as being something that was good for back pain and other neck pain and things like that. So, quite a few years ago now, I used to suffer a lot with my back just going out for apparently no reason. And lots of neck pain and things. So I started having lessons, and I think the thing that really got me hooked was that my first lesson, I was in quite a stressful job at the time, or something that I perceived to be quite stressful, and I had a lot of sort of indigestion, chest pains that were there sort of most of the time. And I had my first lesson, and it wasn't anything I'd mentioned to the teacher or anything like that. And I just remember walking out of the lesson and just feeling like, oh, that's gone. That pain is gone. And so that was the real sort of, oh, there's something interesting here. I'm going to carry on with this. So I did carry on, and I had quite a few lessons with that teacher. And then I sort of stopped for a while. And then a little bit later on, I started to get that, that hump that you get when you get to a bit sort of 50s in the back of your neck here. And I thought, the Alexander technique, I'll have a go at that again. And so I went to a completely different teacher who taught in quite a different way, actually, but I also connected with her too. And the couple of interesting things I found with the lessons with her. One was part of the lesson is to lie on a couch with your knees up and your head on some books. So you're basically lengthening your back and allowing the couch to take your weight and allowing you to stretch out. And I started off with she put a number of books under my head. And after I'd been going for a few weeks, she said, I don't think we need so many books now. And so she took some of the books away. And around about this time, seemingly not connected at all, I started to get really pains in the back of my head. And I was quite, like headache. And I was quite worried about it. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor didn't seem particularly interested about it. And as I was coming out, I suddenly thought, I've obviously been changing in some way, because I don't need so many books on the table, but I'm still using the same number of pillows when I go home to sleep. And so I got rid of one of my pillows, and the neck pain went, the head pain went just like that. So, so I had a sort of background of this. Sorry, one other thing with that particular teacher. I was lying on the table. She was working with me on the table. It's not all we do, but that's one of the things. And she said, "Oh, you just released in your back," and I was like, there was no way. I was lying flat on my back. There's no way she could have seen that.
No.
And so I said to her, "How did you know?" And she said, oh, because I felt it in my own back. And at that
Oh,
point, I thought
wow.
there's something really, really interesting going on here. And I think that's probably what started the little seed of I'm going to train to do this at some point, because this sounds really interesting. So that was my sort of introduction to it. But generally, as a thing, I mean, Alexander was he was around. I was born in mid 1800s, 1860 something, I think, and died in 1955.
Oh,
And
that's a good year.
he was.
That's when I was born.
Yeah, yeah,
When I
yeah,
say
yeah.
that, yeah.
Good. Um, but he was well, he was an actor, an aspiring actor. I'm not sure he was. I think he started off as just an amateur actor, but he was doing recitations, Shakespearean recitations in Australia. He was in Australia, and he found that when he was doing his production, his on stage, that he was losing his voice, and he went to the doctors, and doctors basically said, rest your voice and it'll be fine. And so he did. And the hoarseness went away, his voice came back. But as soon as he went back on stage again, he lost his voice again. And so he started to realize that there must be something he was doing to cause it, because it didn't happen normally. And so he started a long investigation with lots of mirrors and all sorts of things, working out exactly what he was doing when he was declaiming on stage rather than when he was just talking. And he found that, he was tensing up, he was throwing his head back, there was all sorts of things he was doing that he had no idea until he looked in the mirror that he was doing when he was doing his performances. And he went through a whole process, and he realized that just knowing about it wasn't quite enough. The habit was so ingrained that as soon as he started, he went into this habitual pattern. And so he, started to introduce almost like a halt, a stopping, so that he could eventually get to the point where he didn't go into this habitual pattern. And he started working with other people and got to be quite, well known for working. So that's where it comes from. And one of the things that I've found quite fascinating is the sort of range of ways that people teach, because there's lots of different like extremes, if you like. Some people focus very much on the physical, the mechanical advantage, so the things that you do that make it practically easier to move. And then some people focus more on the psychological end of it.
Oh, okay.
And the sort of the habits and the patterns that come with the things that we're, I suppose, suppressing in ourselves.
Yeah.
But my school where I trained was very much on the psychological end of it. The head of training there, Anthony Kingsley, is psychotherapist too, so he was very much focused on that. But not everybody is, so there is a range in that. But when I was training, one of the things I was looking at is why I'd ended up with back pain and neck pain. One of the patterns that I was in, I think arose because my mum was 5 foot. It's difficult to tell here, but I'm about 5'8", 9.
Oh, wow. Okay.
My dad was 6'2", but my mum's sisters, who we spent most of our time with, and their husbands and my cousins were all tiny. So they're all sort of, 5 foot. So I spent a lot of my time, going around like this. I didn't want to be that tall.
Right.
And my mum would say, stand up straight. So I do a sort of contortion to get back to being straight. And so these things become habits for us.
Oh, yeah.
We do, and we don't know we're doing it. And it might be that it's just we're protecting ourselves. There can be a habit of protection where you're folding in on yourself, you're collapsing.
Mhm.
Or you might have had a habit where you've been told all your life, sit up straight, sit up straight and do that sort of whole thing. So we incorporate these patterns, and some of them are protecting us from emotions and things we don't want to feel as well.
Okay.
So in the training, you quite often find that people will get emotional when you're working with them, when you're taking them into different positions that they don't normally go into. It's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like an emotional energy
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind of caught up
yeah,
in our bodies, and you're helping to release that.
yeah. No, yes, our habits. I don't. I mean, It's funny because I was looking at this. There is a sort of thing I think that people think that things are actually stored in your body, but I'm not sure whether it's that or whether it's
Uh-huh.
just the habits that we do
Mm.
tend to put us in the same positions that then cause problems. But yeah, so it's all sort of connected. So,
Yeah.
um, one of the most interesting things for me, I mean, we train for 3 years
Hmm.
to teach, and a lot of that time really is getting still in yourself, so that what
Hmm.
you're not transmitting your sort of angst or habits to
Yeah.
someone else. You're allowing them to be,
Mm.
them the space to open up.
Hmm.
Uh, and what was really fascinating was, because we don't always see the changes in ourselves, do we? But you
No, no,
see
rarely.
see the changes in other people. And so over the 3 years, it was just fascinating watching how people changed. So, people who might have been quite insecure, possibly not that outgoing, um, became more outgoing, more comfortable. And everybody, I think, became more comfortable in their own skin, I would say. But
Uh-huh.
then you have the people who are very hyper and who'd calm down. So it's like we came back to a sort of midpoint, really, back
Right.
into
Yeah.
balance, maybe is the
Uh-huh.
best way of saying it.
Yeah.
And that's both a physical thing and a psychological thing.
Hmm.
Just, yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm. And I mean, that's one of Alexander's things, was that we quite often talk about, mind and body being connected,
Hmm.
but he went beyond that to say they're one. There is no separation.
Yeah.
It's all one. We're going back to wholeness, really.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So yes, that was, and also obviously how we use our body, so that the habits that we have and the patterns that we get into affects how our body functions. So going back to what you were saying about, the older people, if they've had these habits for a long time,
Yeah.
if you've got a habit of slumping, that's going to leave less space for your organs to function
Hmm.
properly.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that can have effects on you. Or if you're used to being
Yes.
like that, then eventually that becomes a pattern that sort of sticks.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's yeah, so it's interesting to see when those start to drop away a little bit.
Yeah. And I can see where, particularly even more so the last 4 or 5 years, but even just like the last 10 or 15 years, um, with everyone getting hooked on their computers.
Mhm.
And I don't know about you, I sit down, oh, I'm just going to take care of this, and then I'm going to go take care of this other thing. And an hour and a half goes by,
Mm.
and I've been sitting.
Mm.
And depending on what I'm doing, I may or may not be sitting up straight, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I'll be lucky if I'm not sitting like this, because
yeah,
I
yeah.
find myself to be doing that,
Mm.
quite often. And it's So I think our the change in our lifestyles
Mm.
has made a big difference
Yeah.
as well.
Mm. And I think the big one is looking at phones, being like this for
Oh,
it.
yes. That drives me crazy. I don't do that, but
Yeah.
the other people, I don't know how many older people do that, but
Yeah. Yeah. I think younger people are going to
oh
it's going
yeah,
to
no,
catch
they're
up with
all
them later on. I
yeah.
one of the things I like to do, because it's quite surprising for people, is I have a weight, a 5 kilogram weight.
Uh-huh.
I hand to people and say, just hold that. And so that's the weight, roundabout between 4.5, 5 kilos is the weight of your head.
Ah,
So
okay.
if it's not balanced on your spine, then that's a lot of weight to be, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, to be out of
around.
whatever, out of alignment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah. And then people wonder why they have headaches or shoulder aches or back aches or arm aches because
yeah,
it affects everything.
yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, so in the lessons themselves, I mean,
You're
normally.
making me think I have to sit up straight. Okay.
No.
No, I do.
That's
I always have to remind myself. I have one shoulder that's lower than the other, and I'm constantly like, okay, go back up, go back up.
that's one of the worst things about telling people you're a teacher, if they know anything about it, is they immediately go and you're like, no, that's not what we're saying.
I love it. Yes, yes. But I will say I do feel better when I sit up straight
Yeah.
and get
If you
myself
find your sitting bones, that's good. Find your sitting bones.
sitting bone
The
in the
bones
back. Huh?
on your bottom, just underneath
Yeah.
you. Use it, yeah. Yeah, they're good for balance for most. Yes, I did say one,
Uh-huh.
just to say a little bit about how we teach, because
Yeah, that'd be
it's
good.
quite sort of yeah, it's all quite paradoxical, really. It's like a lot of these things, but practically how we teach is hands-on people. So we will move people, and quite often it's in and out of a chair. So to get people from sitting to
Mm.
standing. Um, Sometimes it'll be against a wall, or it might be getting people to go up onto their toes, or walking around the room, or whatever. Some teachers actually have saddles. We never did that, but have horse riding saddles and do that. Um, but what some of what we're doing there is, the thing I was talking about before, is the mechanical advantage. So
Mm.
quite often when we're trying to get out of a chair, we use more energy, more effort than we need to.
Mm.
Um, and particularly older people will sort of do that, like they're pushing themselves out of the chair.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a lovely moment with a student of mine. I'm sure she won't mind me saying. She's in her 70s, so she's
Mhm.
I just asked her to stand up from the stool, and she put her hands down on the stool and pushed herself up, and it was quite an effort for her. And I was working with her to get her to bend from her hips rather than at the waist like this, but to
Mm.
bend forward from the hips, keeping your back pretty straight. Um,
Okay.
and
Okay.
then to get to a point where your weight is over your feet. And if you
Yeah.
do that with help, the first time with help, and if you put your heels into the ground, you can stand up quite easily. It's
Mm-hmm.
and it was beautiful because she just looked at me and said, "I did it." Yeah, I did it. I can do it. She was just that look of joy on her face that she'd got out of the chair. And also, if you do that, you don't get quite the same strain in your lower back, which is work
Ah,
in the lower back. I know when I was, I think it was probably when I was training to be a teacher, and I remember distinctly the first time I stood up and thought I didn't notice anything in my back. There was no, because normally I would feel a twinge when I stood up.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
No, no. So yeah, that's it's a nice
Yeah.
feeling. Um, but then also, as I mentioned before, we have work on the table on the couch where
Mm.
you lie, and we move people. Part of the thing is to allow to get people to give us control in a way, so that we move them, and they're not
Mm.
just
Yeah.
an experience of moving without them doing anything. And that's very difficult for some people to
Oh
give
my
them.
God, yes.
Uh, um, but as people do, then it changes
Mm-hmm.
their experience of movement, which is lovely. Yeah. So as I was saying, most of what we do is physically with someone.
Mm-hmm.
So physically touching them with the
Right.
hands, quite often hands on the heart space as well, which is not something that people
Ah.
experience very often. And I think for some people, actually just being touched like that is,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
positive thing to do with that.
Yeah.
Um, but I think you mentioned about the lockdown and the experimenting, because we sort of thought, well, that's it, we can't work at all during lockdown. And I'd actually finished my training, but at the training school where I trained, the head of training decided to do an online course. So I did a postgrad of working online, and that was quite interesting, because you sort of think there's nothing we can do because we're so used to using our hands, and there's nothing, but it did work with your voice, and just
Wow.
talking to people in a way that's not, oh, just get on with it, sort of way, but just move, and when you've got
Uh-huh.
that
Uh-huh.
stillness in your voice, you're transmitting that as well. um, and I another lady that friend of mine that I trained with, we actually met up a couple of times a week to just practice on each other, working just with our voices, just over Zoom, and it was surprisingly effective, actually, surprisingly effective. Because you would think that it wouldn't work, but it did.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I think it's the same thing I've found with which isn't quite so hands-on kind of thing, but even just in coaching,
Mm.
right? Because a lot of times I'll just kind of slow down
Mm.
and 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 people get that.
Mm.
There's that connection that you can still make,
Yeah.
which is really so interesting.
Mm.
It
Mm.
just shows the power of whatever that is. I mean,
Mm. Mm.
I don't have the vocabulary
Yeah.
to actually describe it in real terms.
Mm.
But there's just a connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in a way, teaching, because I've done a bit of coach training. That's where we met, but
Right. Yeah.
um, so I, I think there is a big similarity in with the Alexander technique. In a way, you're physically holding the space for someone
Yeah.
in the same way that you are, as you're saying, in the
Uh-huh.
coaching. You're giving them permission, if you like, to just take up space and be
Yeah.
who they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Yeah. And not have to be in control.
Yeah, yeah. So it's there's a lot of similarities, I think, between the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Mm.
I agree. Um, and at the same time, there's also a number of other modalities, if you want to call it that, that work on the same premise.
Mhm.
You know, which is kind of neat as well. So it's not just coaching, it's not just Alexander technique. There's just so many other physical, um, historical, right, kinds of practices.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me. So so tell us a little bit more. I know you had told me a little bit previously, but just about if people were going to go to an Alexander technique person, or to you for that matter, or online or in person if they happen to be in Chester. The what would they need to be? It's not a good way of putting it. Tell me a little bit about what you would do. Right. I kept thinking of the word expectations, but I don't think that's not the right word I'm trying to find, but it is that kind of so maybe I'll put it in two ways. What kind of expectations do you think people arrive with that they soon realize are wrong?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. And what do you actually do?
Okay.
You were giving me some examples, so that sort of thing. So people have a feel for, okay, so she's an Alexander technique person, and what does she do? And when should I think about going?
Okay. I think it's interesting. People come for lots of different reasons, and one of the biggest is pain. And there was a study done some years ago about back pain in Alexandra, and it came out very well in comparison to things. It's also a lot of drama schools and a lot of music colleges have in-house Alexander teachers because they've realized that it helps with performance, helps with anxiety, but it was, helps with and helps with not damaging your body through playing. I think particularly things like violinists have a lot of issues with shoulders, and so it's done that way. It's in that arena quite a bit as well. But I think for people coming to an individual Alexander teacher, it tends to be pain probably is the most. And I think probably the most, it isn't that we're going to fix you. And I think that's probably that it's going to be a quick fix, or it's going to be, which obviously is the same with a lot of things, isn't it? You think, so it is a training, it isn't a treatment. And if you fit it into a sort of, I suppose, a hierarchy, you might go to see an osteopath or a physio because you've got an injury that needs work on at that point in time. Whereas an Alexander technique teacher is a little bit further down the line of, let's find a way of moving and being in the world so we don't cause that problem again. So I think that's where it fits more into the picture. Although people could, it as I said with my back, it can relieve pain, but it's not. We're not fixing that, if you like. It's just giving different ways of moving and being in the world, and ease of movement, lack of tension in their bodies. A lot of the things that are causing the pain in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
And so it is. Some people will come for like 10 or 20 lessons, and then maybe have top-up lessons every now and then. People keep going. They like it, but it's I think the biggest thing to say is it isn't a treatment. That's not what we're doing. We are training you to be
Okay. Okay. Is it kind of
Moving
like,
in a different way, yeah.
yeah, well, I was going to say it's kind of training people to be how they should be and not necessarily the way they're existing in the world right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, to let go of some of the habits that
Uh-huh.
they've
Yeah.
picked up along the way, and we all do,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
particularly when we get to be over 50 or 60.
Yeah. Yes, yes, because what we could bounce back from when we were in our 30s is is nowhere close to what we can do now.
Yeah, yeah, I think yes, and there's also, I suppose, a build up, isn't there, if you've been doing something that way for a long time.
Yeah.
But, yeah, yeah, it's I mean, practically the lessons are usually half an hour to 45 minutes, depends on the
Uh-huh.
teacher. Um, and it comprises, it will usually be getting in and out of a chair and moving people in and out of a chair probably multiple times
Mm-hmm.
to give
Yeah.
them the experience of moving with ease.
Okay.
And then a period on the table usually as well. For some people, if someone's in a really struggling, you might only do table to start off with.
Okay.
So it
Okay.
depends on it very much depends on the person who comes.
Yeah. No, and that makes a lot of sense. And then when you do that online, how do you
Um,
do that? Or is it mostly
I
with people you've started with
I
beforehand?
personally, I don't work with people online now because
Okay.
I prefer to work
Mm.
but lots of people do.
Hmm.
Someone I trained with is working exclusively online.
Ah,
Um,
interesting. Okay.
that's not, because I think originally we thought, oh well, it'll be okay for people who've had some hands-on work and then they
Yeah.
go work online. But that doesn't necessarily seem to need to be the case. I
Uh-huh.
definitely see people who are working with someone who's never had a physical lesson. So,
Interesting.
yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
and in some there's an interesting thing about that as well, because I think sometimes people can think that you're doing something with your hands, um, that you are sort of fixing them in some way, or you are treating them. So
Yes. Yes.
if you're doing it online,
Yeah.
it can't be that.
Right.
So I think that it can make people possibly more self-reliant than if
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so it's an interesting
Yeah. That would be it's an interesting, as they say, conundrum, I guess.
yeah.
Or, yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but personally, I like being in the room with someone. So
Mm. Yeah. 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 So I'm assuming you probably just need to have like a couch or something like that, or because most people aren't going to have a table
well,
like
people
you
can.
guys would.
Normally, you'll go to the person who's teaching, who will have a
Oh
setup.
yeah, no, no, I meant online.
Oh, online. Sorry. Yeah,
Online.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be on the floor, depending on how
Oh,
how sort
didn't
of
think about that.
agile people are. Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, we do work when we've done online sessions ourselves. We do them. We can do work on the floor. So yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking the couch and stuff would be the same as maybe a, a bench or whatever, that
Yeah,
because
it's
people, if you want them to stand, if you want them to stand up for, for
mm,
sitting and stuff, then
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you really need I mean, a stool is ideal, a wooden stool
ah,
with no
okay.
padding, and it's for lying down work.
Hmm.
It's better to be on the floor than like a squidgy couch or a bed,
No, that
because
makes sense.
it doesn't give you the
Right.
support
Yeah.
that's useful, really.
Yeah. 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 No, that makes a lot of sense.
And
Huh.
a lot of I'm very bad because I don't do it regularly, but a lot of actually a lot of people will say to their students, just lie down yourself for 10 minutes a day, and that will make quite a bit of difference.
Uh-huh.
But yes, I'm that's one of the things. Do what do what I say, not what I do.
Ah, got it. Okay.
Because I'm not very good at doing that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, people I know, friends who do it say, yeah, I know it really does make a difference. So.
Huh. So do you put something under your head, or what do you?
Usually some paperback books, so so they're a little bit squidgy, but not very.
Uh-huh.
And get your head so that you're not sort of squidging up here, but also you're not
Not, yeah, right. I was just gonna say, yeah.
pretty much straight, so your head's
Uh-huh.
straight, your neck's
Uh-huh.
straight.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
And so that's something anybody can do anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to try that.
because it does it allows your back just to lengthen.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it does make sense because I mean, even when we're standing up straight, our head is not back at,
Mm.
at even with the back of your back,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
in the middle. I mean,
yeah,
that's the whole idea of how we're built.
yeah. Yeah, so that's how it was an interesting thing because sometimes we'll point out how how the skeleton is because sometimes people don't realize that the top of the spine is actually up here, is right. And so that's you tend to think people think it stops sort of around
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
actually goes all the way up there where you balance on the top of the spine. So.
Yeah. That is funny. Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't even thought
Mm.
about it myself because it one way or
Mm.
the other, I never,
Well, it's not
um,
something you think about until you start.
no.
Thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. But it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Because your head is sitting on your neck.
Mm.
That's the whole cervix or
Yeah.
cervical, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have. I don't have one here, but I do have another place a skeleton. So
Ah,
some people
uh-huh.
will be very keen on showing people, how we actually fit together, where your hips are. Your hips are where you think they are.
Okay. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Which is one of the things that I learned a long time ago, which is that actually standing up straight is not standing up straight,
Mm.
right? The
Mm-hmm.
the bet because really your butt and your hips kind of go out
Mm.
a little bit
We
and
have
your
a natural.
knees really ought to be bent, not standing there with your knees going
Yeah.
and flexed inward or whatever, backward or whatever, which is the way, particularly women.
Mm. Mm.
Men aren't taught that, but women are. I don't know whether it's actual teaching or it's just
Mm.
we learn it from just being around other women. It just gets handed down. you
It's
know.
like when one of my habits, which is quite a common one, when I was standing up or sitting down, was for my knees to go together. So
Ah,
even if my legs weren't together, my knees would go in.
okay. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I think as women, we're very, we're sort of taught to keep
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
legs
Yeah.
right.
Exactly. Exactly. Especially for those of us who had to wear dresses and skirts
Yeah.
to school, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that was a habit that I didn't know I had. And that's the other thing as well. We don't know we have these habits.
It's true. Yeah.
Our,
Yeah.
because our body eventually adapts to them, so it doesn't tell us they're wrong anymore. So
Mm, yeah.
we have our sensory feedback doesn't tell us. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Well, maybe on that note, it's a good kind of wrap up that um I don't know if you want because you've given a lot of hints to people to of
Yeah.
suggestions of what to do and
Mhm.
what to look for
Yeah.
to a certain degree. I don't know if there's any last suggestions you want to make or if we should just
Yeah,
just
I
wrap it
mean,
up.
if you can't, you're not able to get to a teacher or whatever. I think
Mm,
lying down is useful. I know I was being facetious before, but it is a useful thing to do.
Yeah.
At the at the end of a long day, it gives you back
Ah,
a
okay.
bit of a rest.
Yeah. 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 Do you put anything under your knees when you do that, or just
You have your knees up. Sorry, so
ah,
your feet are
got
flat
it.
on the ground. Sorry, I didn't explain that. So
Okay.
your back is flat, your
Mm-hmm.
knees pointing up to the ceiling, and
Okay.
your feet are flat.
And not like this, but like that.
Yes, a little way, and you don't go to sleep. Be conscious,
Yeah.
but just see how much you can let go of, how much you're holding. You don't need to hold. Really.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Just relax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
not a
Okay.
floppy relaxed, but I
No,
don't.
no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah. Let go of the tightness. How's that?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And then you suggested maybe a paperback book or something
yeah. A
underneath the
couple of
head.
books. Just so your neck is parallel with the ground, really. But
Okay.
you can tell if you like
Yeah. Yeah.
squished
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
area.
Whether you're like yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. 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 Once you start doing it, it becomes obvious, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, we can put some emails or whatever websites or whatever in the show notes if people want to follow up with trying to find someone in their area
Yes,
to go to.
there's an
You,
organisation in the
uh-huh.
UK called STAT, and I think the
Okay.
American one is called AMSTAT. So I
Okay.
can give you
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
because that will give a look up for teachers in your area.
Oh, okay. Great. Yeah, that'd be good. I can put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And I'm going to do my usual closing, which is that neither of us are doctors and none of this should be considered as medical advice because it's not. So, if you're having any sort of medical issues, please go to the hospital or to your own doctor and get that taken care of. Um, and with all that being said, thank you very much, Christine, for coming on. It was a
Thank
very
you.
enlightening and enjoyable conversation. And to everybody else, I will see you all next week.